moving along inside the Maimer, we're going to be in Yud Aleph here. We started this paragraph and we asked the question that I just asked, which is what is the connection that when Moshe brings us to this point of snapping into Mesiras Nefesh, we then bring him olive oil. What is this concept? And before we answer it, there is a brackets, which is very interesting, shed some light on this whole matter, which if you take it right from the middle of the first paragraph, Yud Aleph, it starts with the brackets there, and it says, V'yesh lomar. We can say, Tezeu masha kasuv v'ata tetzaves b'nei Yisrael. This is really what it means, that you will command the Jewish people, you will connect the Jewish people. The lashon v'ata tetzaves b'nei Yisrael, when it says you will connect the Jewish people, mashma shem Moshe metzav mekashem mechaber b'nei Yisrael atzma. The way we've been learning it up until now is you will connect the Jewish people, means you will connect them to their essence, right? That they're you have the ability to draw the Or Ein Sof out and join it to them. But what it actually says is because, and I've had classes when I taught this before, and people actually ask this question. When it says V'ata Tetzave ben Israel, it doesn't actually say what you're connecting to them. You shall connect the Jewish people. And the Rebbe said in the beginning of the Maimer, to the Or Ein Sof. But in the verse, it doesn't say what he's connecting them to. Ata Tetzave ben Israel. So what it actually does say in the simple pshat of the verse is you will connect the Bnei Yisrael, in other words, to each other. That's what it actually says. V'ata tetzave, you will connect Bnei Yisrael, which is Moshe's real job. And what happens when he connects us to the Or Ein Sof is he actually connects us to each other. Like you were saying yesterday, that when Moshe sort of brings out our essence, it's the same essence for all of us. And therefore, it's like it negates our individuality in a certain sense. It's like it brings out the Pintel Yid, and therefore it really binds us all together. When Jews are, unfortunately, when do we see Jews really all get along? It's when there's an enemy comes at us. Otherwise, we're all busy, scattered, and fighting with each other most of the time.
That's what
right?
did.
But when there's an enemy coming against us, then all of a sudden our Pintel Yid comes out, our force of our neshama from above that sees God suddenly comes into the soul, into the body, and we jump into Mesiras Nefesh mode, and practically speaking, we all suddenly get along with each other. And this is what the pasuk says: "Va'ata tetzave," you will connect the Bnei Yisrael to each other. Ki mitzad etzem and neshama kol Yisrael himcha, because from this level, all the Jewish people are literally one. We've joined the singularity, and then we don't have no more machlokes.
Okay, this is strange. What are you advocating? You're advocating staying in the Golas? I guess. Maybe I'm ahead of myself here.
You're ahead of yourself. Yeah. So no, the point is, I said this story before. I think maybe you weren't in the class, but there was a scenario of like all these alter Chassidim, and a young Rabbi Gafni was invited to speak, and he was a brilliant orator, even when he was younger, and he started speaking about all these qualities, kasis lama'or, and how when you're crushed, specifically you reach the luminary, and only when there's a resistance and an exile, that's what brings out our deepest powers. And we said, like, this alter chassid that kicked him in the shin under the table. Yeah, he's like, it's true. All the things we're saying about exile are very true. That's why Hashem created the world and right away put Adam into Gullus and it destroyed one temple, destroyed another temple, and sort of forced our hand in the golden calf. Like, there is a utility from the dark side, right, which gives a tremendous force and almost meaning to the light side. We can't get all excited about it to the point that we want it to stay, right? The ultimate idea is to overcome it and even transform it and to bring it to ultimate peace. But it does say when Mashiach comes, we're going to look back in the days of exile and be cringe with, disappointment on the opportunity that we had then that we squandered because we were in a situation of darkness. Just think about it. Hashem's number one goal of free will, which is like the purpose of all creation, high and low, can only happen when God is not in the picture clearly. You can only choose God when He's not obviously already there. So a darkness is like part of the essence, and this is actually what we're saying. What is the essence? You can see the essence as like dark, unrevealable, right, essence, and then light is just like a mere ray that comes off of that. So the darkness is actually higher in that sense than the light. However, what we're saying here is that it's like an inappropriate way of looking at the essence. That really the dark and the light are really one, right? And ultimately the essence can come to being seen. It doesn't have to stay in the dark. And that's the purpose of our free choice, is we turn that darkness into light. So ultimately we're not, rooting for the darkness. We're just explaining its utility. Anyway, Al Yidei Avoda. So what does Moshe get out of this? Right? By him connecting the Jewish people to our essence, and thus making this amazing bond of all of Am Yisrael, is making us like one. What does he get through our avoda of Yisrael? After Moshe, Mordechai, or the Rebbe, whoever does this to us, and he sort of reminds us and brings us to this point of the Pintel Yid, we are not done, right? That's his job to deliver that to us. It's almost like a gift from above to below, just like we said by Matan Torah, which is called Matan, because it's a matana, that Hashem put the mountain over our head, and he was a mountain of love, you could argue, and he basically forced us to see him, and we all said Nice of Nishma in one voice, because like Hashem, if he wants to, he could just reveal something to us and make us all come together. It's a coercion. It could be a coercion from an enemy, or it could be a coercion from a miracle, but the point is that it's coerced, but it brings us to our essence. Once that happens, the Rebbe says, is where we really come in. Once Moshe has done his job and sort of brought you to remember who you really are, then you can do avoda from that new perspective. And that's called the avoda of internalization, right? Integration. Shagam kochas agiloim shelahem, which means that now that you've reached this place where your Pintel Yid is activated, you can now work so that your revealed powers, your tziur da kochos, in other words, what makes you individualized, each tribe, right? Before Moshe came and did his job on you, everybody was busy arguing with each other, like championing their own cause. So when Moshe comes and removes our arguments and makes us all one, it doesn't really remove our own cause. We still have total individual interests, which are not one, right? But the point is, now that you've been brought to this state of oneness, your avoda now is to bring that experience of the oneness back into your own camp and into your own mind, into your own heart, and integrate this experience of truth into the area of the plurality of your own self. So that you matimim le'etzem neshama, so that now your own private self, private citizen, what we call Reb Yid, the individual, right, will be in alignment with Klal Yisrael.
Wow, that's great.
Right? So there's Reb Yisrael and Klal Yisrael. So when the Rebbe brings you to the point that you remind you that you're part of Klal Yisrael, and temporarily you forget your own individual private interests. Mm-hmm. But ultimately what he wants you to do then is you have to do the next step on yourself. This part he can't do for you. Right. And that's the idea of Vayikchu Elecha, that you will then bring something to him. What he brings to you, he doesn't need you for. So once he's brought you to the realization that you're part of Klal Yisrael, you have to then integrate your essence into your own private matters. Another word for this is called shlichus, right? Like each one's sent to a different job, and you have to bring your kochos and your essence into that particular place. That he can't do for you, right? And therefore, by doing it, when you do it through this, what you do is you create the advantage for the essence of the soul. Remember we said before, the essence of the soul could be seen in two different ways. One is that it's this relegated entity versus your revealed powers, or one, a much more broad, deeper understanding is that it's also the essence of your revealed powers. They're not in opposition. So when Moshe brings you to the first step, your job is to then bring yourself to the second step, and by doing so, you've just unlocked a new dimension of the essence. Because you're the only one that can actually summon and articulate the true nature of the essence. Moshe can only sort of bring to you the relative nature of the essence, because he shines upon you from above in a coercing type of way, right? In a slightly makif way, right? And then your job is to then integrate it. So when you do the integration, you're the one who's shown that the essence is not only something from above, it's also something from below. Wow. So therefore, even though Moshe's job is the Raya Mehemda is to connect you to your essence, he can only connect you to your essence in the limited version. When you then take the lead from him and integrate, you reveal the higher version of the essence, and that is a gift to Moshe, because he can't do that for you. So the truth is that Mamash the Chassid is really in possession, in theory, of something higher than the Rebbe, than the Tzaddik. He might have it himself, he might have integrated his own personal self, but his job is to make you aware of your essential Yiddishkeit. And then your job is to bring that into all of your qualities and categories. And when you do that, you've just hatched a new dimension of essence that the Rebbe himself could not deliver to you.
Right.
So the Rebbe also gains from there being a new level of essence in the world that he didn't have access to until you did your job. This is like the crazy interdependent relationship that we have with the Rebbe. And this is again his last mimer when he's like signing off. He's like, by the way, I'm going to need you to take care of this for me because I can't do it by myself.
That's why that's why people would say, reveal yourself as Mashiach, and he actually could not. He could bring us right to the 1 yard line.
Right.
He's like, you got to take
That's
it over
right.
the goal
That's
line.
exactly right. Because it's not what Mashiach. How does Mashiach really truly reveal himself? He will reveal the ultimate essence, but that is accomplished by you taking the lead and doing it. So only until you've accomplished your job can he say he's accomplished his job. It's much like the yeshiva here, right? We have a program, and we want to get certain things accomplished. And it's like there's a program by X from this month to this month. You're going to be learning smicha, right? You're gonna learn skills in Gemara, literacy. So it's like this is the goal. But if you don't do that goal, the Hanhala can't say that they've accomplished any goals, right? We have the goal. We've got the program. We bring you to the mamash to the 1 yard line. But if we cannot accomplish our goals unless you guys are accomplishing your personal goals. That's just the way it is. It doesn't. You can't champion yourself on being a leader if the people that are intended to be the followers are not themselves lifting you up. So this is what it says. Through this, there's an advantage, an addition of the essence of the soul. Shenimshecha v'nizgalsa behem al yidei Moshe, right? And this is what it means. Vayikchu ilecha. We will then bring something to you, Moshe. Ki al yidei zeh mizgale bashorsha ha'amiti k'mo shimushreshes ba'atzmus. Because what Moshe does is he gives us access to our source, our essence, but in a way where it's this relegated notion of the essence. And when we integrate, we reach the essence as it truly is. In other words, the soul as it's rooted in the essence, where the individual parts and the singularity are one, in that highest state of true essential godliness, where there is no conflict between singularity and plurality, right? We can only summon that and access that when our plurality parts are in alignment with our singularity parts. And therefore, this also enlightens, as it were, Moshe, brings him oil.
So this is why not to renounce, like when Hashem created the creation, he had to go all the way to the last aspect of it, right? Which is this ugly, this kind of sordid part of it. And yet, that's why we don't renounce that. You would think, I got to stay away from that. I'm going to go where the light stuff is, not the dark stuff. So you've made it known, or it's been made known to us through what you've been expounding, that's where the fuel is to attain this thing.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. The soul comes down to this world because of what it gets from the body, right? And yet you still have people in this world who feel that it's their spiritual way to shun the body, to remove themselves from the body, which in a certain sense is the negative parts of the body have to be discarded. But the positive parts of the body, which is basically that God is there too, if you don't find that, then the whole purpose of your being created and being brought here is completely a waste, basically. That's what it's all about. The ha'ir, in this parentheses, sha'al yidei zeh nizvasev gam ba'achdus Yisrael. Okay, we mentioned in passing, it was actually a bracket before and it's a bracket now. But these two little brackets, I just want to say something kind of amazing. In this little brackets, the Rebbe is signing off Maimer, he actually redefines the concept of Avos Yisrael. And that is a big deal because Chassidus already redefined the concept of Avos Yisrael in the Tanya, in Perek Lamed Beis of Tanya, which is famously called the heart of the Tanya. There is a whole understanding of the true meaning of how you can truly love another Jew as yourself. And what he basically winds up explaining there is to come to the realization, how do you love another Jew as yourself? It's impossible. You have your own self-interests. Where is it? In other words, it would be some act of tremendous, like hiskafia or subjugation of my own person to actually love you as much as I love myself. And even if I'm going to have such an unbelievable subjugation of myself, is it even really real? I'm just sort of pretending to love you as much as myself. My needs are intrinsically, I'm made in such a way that they're most precious to me. right? And so what he explains is you have to get yourself to a realization of looking at the Jew for what he really is. This is Tanya, not here. And he says that the Jew for what he really is the Pintel Yid. He is a neshama. He's not a goof, right? The whole goof is really just like a case that carries this neshama around. And if you're going to focus on the case, yeah, you're going to find that this case is bumping into this case, and this one wants this, and this one. But if you can see the truth of this individual, and that we all have one soul, we're all like twins. We're all like we have one father, and we can't judge one soul over the other soul because who knows which soul is higher than the other. This is like the matters of God. Therefore, you can truly love another fellow Jew. And the whole Tanya is basically bringing you to this realization. It's called the heart of the Tanya. Because in a certain sense, the entire concept of the Tanya, which therefore is the entire concept of a Chassidus, which is like the panemius of the whole Torah, is about getting to this point. Right? That's what it says. Like Hillel said, the rest is commentary. Like, love your fellow as yourself. This is the whole Torah. This is Rabbi Akiva's main point. This is Hillel's main point. This is the whole Torah. And this is the Tanya's main point. The Tanya shows you how to get there. Which is ignore the body, find the soul, and you can truly love another person as yourself. Comes the Rebbe, Bata Tetzave, and he's like, I'll do you one better, right? Because if you think about it, what have we just established? That in order to love another person, you have to get yourself away from the darkness of this world. Remove yourself from the individuality, the pluralism, and the pluralistic notion of each one's individuals, and find the singularity. Find what we all have in common, and then you can love each other.
Amen.
But the Rebbe says no. That's a limited level of understanding a Yid.
Wow.
The Tanya itself.
Was the ultimate, though.
Yeah. So he says like this: Laha'ir, that based on what we just said, that what we said, right? That Moshe. Tetzave b'nei Yisrael, we said, right? And we ultimately explained that it means you will connect not the Jewish people to the Orient Soul, but you're going to connect the Jewish people to each other, right? And how? For this reason we just said in the Tanya. Because when you connect them to the Orient Soul, when you make them realize that spirituality trumps physicality, they're going to wind up having a greater bond, right? They're going to see past their differences. And the idea is that the connectivity and the unity of Jews that comes about when the essence of the neshama gets revealed, right? He kamo davar nosav al mitziyusa. But nonetheless, when Moshe does this to us, we've now given this a few different names. It's like Matan Torah. It's like Haman. It's like your own soul coming in from above and like seizing you. This is called a davar nosav. It's called an additional add-on to your nature. So this whole stream of Avas Yisrael that the Tanya is shooting for, the Rebbe here is saying it's kind of like it's not the real you. Because even if you're going to get to a point where you promote spirituality over physicality, and therefore you can come to love another Jew, well, great, but what about my physicality? I have to ignore myself in order to love you. That's basically what the Tanya is coming to say, right? Because this part of my essence, which is going to come and be revealed, it's not really me. It's like this, it's a notion of the essence, which is this relegated thing, which has to come and like seize me. But the me, left on its own devices, doesn't really like you very much. It's just that if you're going to mamish like take the essence and overcome the real me, so we're all brothers, everyone gets along. But that's not a true and lasting Abbas Yisrael. And how do we get to this type of achdus? It's because we make our soul the main thing and our body the secondary thing, as we said. But if we will follow that little formula that the Rebbe gave us a moment ago, which is that after he brings you to your Pintel Yid, and he like shows you your essence, and he connects you with your, then you do the work of integration, and you basically bring it into your mind, and you make it your Pintel Yid fitting with your own intellect, and you make it fitting with your own emotions and with your own thought, speech, and action. You basically integrate this true nature of yourself into all of the would-be you that was arguing with the other guy. And as you make it make sense to yourself. Then you have, what did we just say before? You access the true nature of the essence, where there is no dichotomy and opposition between the essential self and the real self. Right? When those two things come together, that is like equal sign to you reach the true nature of the essence, where all opposites align. And when you therefore integrate and do this work that the Rebbe is talking about, bring Moshe the olive oil back, And then you made it so that your own depiction of your finite individual powers are in line with your essence. The Achdus, the Yisrael, he bechol inyanim shelehem. Then you have real Avos Yisrael. Because now the would-be me, which had to be put on the side in order to get along with the would-be you, which also had to get put on the side because we're dealing in an essence level. Now that I've integrated my essence with myself, my actual self gets along with you because my self has been elevated to the point that it agrees with my deepest, innermost, subconscious Jewish self.
Yeah.
And therefore we really get along because we don't have to overcome ourselves to get along with each other. We don't have to find some essential place where we're one to get along with each other, because even the place when we're many, ultimately the many is also one. And those things, and that's like the idea of like the 12 tribes. It was really like the 12 permeations of Hashem's name, Hashem Echad. It's really all one. This is true Achdus and true Avos Yisrael. And this is, again, the Rebbe is just like, if you want it, here it is. I can't do it for you, but I'll explain exactly how this works. Right? Because then we also have a fusion and a love, even for inyanim that are shaychim lahaguf, even things which are connected to our physical needs. Whereas before we had to overcome the physicality and deny it in order to realize that our true achdus was our spiritual lives together. In this way, you can realize that your true achdus is actually in your physical needs are important. The other person's physical needs are important. Their space is important. It's kind of like this, like changes like the way like politics is no longer a dirty word, because you realize like each one's needs, their finite individual needs, are not only important to them, they're important to you. Just like the body, like each limb needs each other, and you need the foot to be happy in order for the head to be happy. Not easy, easier said than done, but
okay.
True nonetheless. Okay, so Al Pi Zeh, final paragraph. We are nearing the end. According to all of this, Yuvan b'mashakasu b'maimer. We can understand. There was like little brackets, by the way. The Rebbe basically like redefined the whole Tanya just like in a bracket in the middle of this mimer, just to point that out. What's that? Like the point of the Jewish soul. I think that's what it means. Okay, Al Pi Zeh, Yuvan Mashakasu b'maimer. We can understand what my father-in-law, the Frierdiker Rebbe, said in his mimer. The Aydei Yisrael Mosifim, Aydei Avodasam, b'Madrigas Moshe, that by the Jewish people adding through our divine service of integration into the level of Moshe, because we hatched the level of essence that even Moshe was not privy to before. Through this, Aydei Zeh Yeh Ner Tamid. Okay, so we're now finally getting to the fourth of the four questions of the beginning of the mimer. Remember what they were? Ata Tetzave. What's that?
Why this phrase?
Why what?
Why the phrase?
Ata Tetzave.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why bring the crushed oil to Moshe if Aaron is lighting?
Right, so we answered that. What does it mean, Ata Tetzave? You connect. Why are we bringing the oil to Moshe? We just answered that now. Because that brings Moshe this whole other level of true essence. What's the third one? Kasis Lamaor, because being crushed reaches to the luminary. And the final one we didn't answer, which was? There's two verses right next to each other, talking about the menorah.
Why the duration is different?
Right. One says in our pasuk, right? It says, "Vayikru Hashem and Zayzach kasis lamaor lalos ner tamid," to bring up a continual flame. Right? Because in the simple meaning of this verse, it's talking about Moshe commanding the Jewish people to bring him literally oil to light the menorah, and it says a continuous flame. But in the verse right afterwards, it says that it's a flame mi'erev ad boker, from evening to morning, which is fine. Like even if technically they mean the same thing, we're not necessarily changing the meaning of how long the menorah was lit. But why does the Torah want to say the same phrase in two completely opposite ways, right next to each other? So he explains here. Okay, halachically yes, but spiritually, what's the difference between them? There's a major difference between them. In our verse, once you bring this oil to Moshe, which has the connotation of this whole revelation of this true essence, as we've been describing, it says Yeh Ner Tamid, right? It will be a continuous flame. To L'chora Zesha Ner Dan Neshama, seemingly the candle, which is the candle of the soul, really, we're talking about. Ner Havaya Nishmas Adam, as the phrase says, the candle of God is the soul of man. So when we're talking about a Ner Tamid, we're immediately switching our attention to the spiritual connotation of lighting the Jewish candle, which is the soul. What we're saying is seemingly the candle of the soul is tamid, in other words, which means continuous, which means shaveh, bli shinoi. It's always the same, it's without change. How does this come about? Hu ayidei gilui etzem neshama shenimshach ayidei Moshe. This seemingly happens because Moshe brings us in face to face with our soul, and he reveals the essence of our soul, which is this singularity, which is always there, and he shows it to us, right? And that's what it means, va'ata tetzave. When Moshe connects us to the Or Ein Sof, seemingly that itself makes the ner, the soul, tamid. It makes it like a continuous, unchanging, ready to die soldier of Hashem, because you've revealed our true inner nature. The be'etzem neshama ein shayach chino, because when it comes to the essence of the soul, it doesn't change its mind, right? It doesn't change based on the generation, based on the philosophy. It's just one with Hashem's will, and it's always tamid. So the question is, why we're having here saying Ata Tetzave b'nei Yisrael. If you're going to connect us to our soul, it's going to be tamid right off the bat. In the Maimer, however, Omer Sha'in the Ner Tamid Hu Aydish Yisrael Mosifim B'Dregas Moshe Vayikolecha. Not only in the Maimer, but also in the simple verse. When does it say the Ner is Tamid? When does it say the soul reaches a state of total continuity, where it never really is wavering? It's not right after V'ata Tetzave b'nei Yisrael.
You bring the oil, he's got to bring it
It does, right. It doesn't say that you'll connect us to God and then I will be tamid. It says Vayikroilecha shemen zayis. Only when we turn around with our own avoda of integration and bring him back something, which we now know is this real essence, that's when we can bring up a ner tamid. So the stability and the continuity and the essential unchangingness of the soul is not a factor of Moshe showing it to us. It comes after we bring him back, the integration part. That's when it says lalos ner tamid. That's when the soul becomes completely unwavering. V'yesh lomar sheba'agilu de'etzem neshama b'derech milamayla mata de'avata tetzav. And why is this? Because when it comes to the revelation of the essence, which Moshe delivers to us from above to below, like Matan Torah, like Stalin, Lahavdil, like your own soul, like Moshe showing you your own soul in your face and making you do what it says, when it comes like that, yesh chiluk ben erev uboker. It's an amazing thing the Rebbe says here. When that's happening, then we've applied the second verse, which says, you shall light the candle from evening to morning. Because the candle of the soul, and that when it's coming from that place, it has a distinction between evening and morning, right? Meaning, the main revelation of the soul is when it's evening, when Stalin is there, when you're in the dark and the gullus is oppressing you. Then you'll jump into action. Then your essence of your soul will rise up. So also then, like your, so to speak, continuity, continuity comes. But what kind of real continuity is that if when the sword is removed from your neck, you go back? So even though you have access, the unchanging eternal soul, the fact that it itself can come and go, that's not real true continuity. If you have no access to it at all, so then you're in a state of constant fluctuation. Your mind and your heart are always flipping around. That's by their definition. If you can access the essence, it's an unfluctuating, essential, non-changing thing. But the problem is it comes and goes. So when it's there, you're perfect and you're unchanging. But that's only when it's night. It's only when there's a force upon you, right? But when that force goes away, right? So then you're left back to yourself. The eternality of your soul, it's still eternal. It's just it's not eternal for you because it's eternal over in its relegated essential place, and you go back to being a changed man, right? When it's night, you arouse inside of yourself the power of Mesiras Nefesh. As we explained earlier, that in Russia, all the Jews had this eternal, essential soul that was ready to die for God. And that's also the beginning of the Purim story, right? When the decree and the threat of Haman is out there was also a type of receiving of the Torah that happened then. But it wasn't there's the dual nature of it. So that was night. So we received the Torah, but only in a nighttime version. But then when those same Stalin Jews came to a land of the free, and it was, so to speak, morning, it was no longer night, or we're talking about in the end of the Purim story when Haman was already dead. So it could come to a situation, you don't recognize their eternal, unchanging, unwavering Yiddishkeit anymore. Where did it go? It's because the essence only came out at night. Whereas the true nature of the notion of the continuous flame, which is in our verse, it says, it only happens after Vayikro Elecha. After we bring Moshe the olive oil, then it says we have a continuous flame. It comes only through the avoda of the Jewish people, the integration of your kochos hagiloyim, of your revealed powers, that they should become one and synonymous with your essential powers, so that the fluctuation, the lack of fluctuation is not only taking place from the standpoint of your essence, but even from your fluctuating parts, your mind and your heart. They also have like converted to Judaism, so to speak. They've become, like rock solid in their unwavering commitment to Hashem, even from the standpoint of the actual you. They don't need to be superimposed from the singularity. And that's the idea of Vayikro Elecha, that only after it says, we will bring you, Moshe, from our integrated selves, then La'alos Ner Tamid, then we will finally have this eternal, unchanging, unwavering candle.
Maybe this whole evening to morning thing, it's also like what the Rebbe, I think the Rebbe said this, the Rebbe said, with the last generation of gods, the first generation of Gula, it's like the nighttime to the daytime, it's like that one flame, that flame that goes into night into day.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, let's wrap it up here. We're going to finish this mimer right now, hopefully. Right? So we've already sort of said this, that this explains why, this is a new point, I'm sorry. Yeah. Why Kasis Lamaor, crushed to reach the luminary, comes in as a follow-up to Vayikro Elecha, that they will take to Moshe. This is actually a really amazing point. Should not be overlooked.
First comes
crush
it to Moshe.
No, yeah.
And then
crushed, right. Exactly. First we bring it to Moshe, then crushed to reach the luminary. Right? So why is it in that order? He says, because, and this is like the kicker, this is like the real signing off of the Rebbe. He gives you like ultimate confidence and blessing. Because he's Lamar, in this verse of being crushed to reach the luminary, Nichlal Gam Zeh Yisrael Hem Shvurim B'Nidakim B'Kasis Mizeh Shem B'Galus. It includes this notion of crushed, not with the sword on our neck, but the crushed of just being found in Galus, right? When it says Kasis Lamaor, it includes the notion of being crushed simply because we're found in Galus. The Inyan Zehu Ayidei Avodasim Shel Yisrael. And how do we get crushed? Simply because we're found in Galus? That Moshe doesn't actually give us that, if you recall, right? We have to integrate the essence into ourselves in order to feel dissatisfied with the reality around us, right? That it's because it's opposing God. Which means shagam kochas hagiloim shelehem yumatim le'etzem haneshama, right? Through our work of integration, we make it that our powers are in line with our essence. Ubechinas hamaor deneshama shemizgalis al yidei zeh hi etzem haneshama kmo shemushresh ba'atzmus, right? And the level of the essence of the neshama, which is revealed through this, is the true essence of the neshama as it's rooted in its source in the atmos. And that's why it says the concept of crushed to illuminate after it says that will bring to you. So what's the verse say? It says, Tetzave b'nei Israel, he'll join to you. Then we will bring it back. We'll do the integration, and then it says Kasis Lamaor, right? Shemen Zayizach Kasis Lamaor. Because basically, in that verse of telling us that in our crushed state we'll reach the luminary, it's also indicating the ultimate level of the luminary. And that's why it follows the words, Vayikro Elecha, will bring to Moshe, because that already is after the integration takes place. So the point he's bringing here, right, and it's going to be like a lead-in for the next line, which is very important. We have just enough time to finish calmly.
Wait, I thought this was
right? The last line, the last paragraph, right, is as follows. What did he just got through saying, right? That in the verse, as in its final reading, right, when the words Kasis Lamaor are said, which means crushed to reach the luminary, it's clearly referring to the highest level of crushedness, and therefore the highest level of the luminary, which is the highest level of crushedness is being crushed just because we're in Gullus, not because of a factor against us. And the highest level of the luminary is the true nature of the essence, which is not a relegated notion of the essence, right? And how do we know that the words kasis lamar mean that? Because the words kasis lamar come after the words vayikchu elecha, which means we've already brought to Moshe Rabbeinu all these qualities of integration, and therefore a new and improved version of the essence. Okay, so in the end of the analysis, when the words kasis lamar are used, it's referring to the ultimate state of the essence coming out of being crushed. Now, in conclusion, v'hine aperush b'pashtus b'va'at tetzaves b'nei Yisrael v'yikchu elecha. So that whole thing we just said was like this deep mystical rereading of this line, right? But in the simple notion, when it says you will command the Jewish people and that they will bring to you, you will command the Jewish people that they will bring to you. This is a commandment that Moshe is commanding them, the Jewish people, that they should bring to him. Which means even the bringing to him, which was the avoda that we had just got through saying he cannot do for you. And you must do it yourself. This is the integration which is essential to you. How does that take place? Because he commands you, as it were, to bring to him. So you might feel like, okay, Rebbe, like this is an amazing mimer, but like you're at the hard part of bringing down the ultimate essence, you're leaving to me, right? What do you want me to do about this exactly? So he explains at the very last paragraph that even the part which is entirely up to you, and I can't do it for you, and I'm here. The Rebbe said in his first Farbrengen with the Chassidim ever, he said, I'll print my Marim and I'll sit here and I'll say Farbrengens, but I can't do it for you, right? And this was like his line throughout. At the very end, the last line, he says this, that you have to bring it to me. Even that, it says in the verse, he commanded you, so to speak, to bring it to him, which means what? We can understand from here in a secret way. Which means he is going to join us to God in such a way that he's empowering us to do something. That joining and that empowerment also applies to the v'yikchu elecha. That we are supposed to integrate and bring it back to him, he is also empowering us to do that. Right? Because it says, v'ata tetzave, I will connect you, I will join you, I will fuel you to do what? Not just to join the Orient Sof, but to also join to the v'yikchu elecha, that the part that's your part, that I can't do for you, even that I'm empowering you to do.
Through the commandment.
When you say commandment, but the word means to join. In other words, he's joining you to the Orient Sof and empowering you even to do your part. And basically this is, it's a powerful concept. What does it even mean? It reminds me, we're coming up eventually to Elul over here. And this is kind of like an Elul vort. The whole idea of Elul and Rosh Hashanah, as opposed to Nisan, is that from in the month of Rosh Hashanah, the time of Rosh Hashanah, the whole idea is that it's supposed to come from below to above. It's the time of tshuva, where we have to do the work, and we have to crown the king. Whereas in Nisan, it's like Hashem's going to bring us out of Mitzrayim, right? Hashem's going to give us the Torah. So we're coming up, we're finishing Baruch Hashem, this more or less easier part of the year, you could say, when it's coming from above to below, and then you reach up to Rosh Hashanah, where you have to do the work. It's very similar to what the Rebbe is saying here. But we say in Elul that the king is in the field. So the king is in the field is the exact opposite of that. He comes to you, and he makes himself available to you, right? And anyone who wants can go and see him. And the idea is that even though he's demanding from you to do the work, and you got to crown the king. A king can't crown himself. It's a ridiculous thing. What kind of king is that? Right? You have to crown the king. It's all about you. But the king comes to you and empowers you and shows how close he is to you. He makes it so that you can crown the king because he's approached you and he's given you all the. Now, when the king comes to you in the field, he doesn't knock on your door and sit in your living room. He just comes to the field, which means he makes himself available. He gives you the ability and makes it easy for you, but he doesn't do it for you. Right? But the fact is, he's not sitting there doing nothing. And the same concept is over here. The Rebbe is saying there's a part that I can't do for you. And therefore you might feel like you're on your own, especially when we're talking about Gimel Tammuz. and the Rebbe seemingly in a physical sense is not doing anything for you. And you might be like, well, I'm really on my own. I understand the Maimer's telling me like it's all up to me now, but like ad kedei kach that I'm mamish on my own, you left? So Rebbe's saying no, like even the part that's absolutely 100% your part, V'ata Tetzave b'nei Yisrael v'yikoi lecha. I'm commanding you and empowering you to bring this to me, which means he doesn't leave you alone for a second. He's going to give you the ability, even in your most darkest parts, to do it yourself. Right? And because really on your own, that would be a little bit much to ask. So you are empowered even to do it yourself. And he says, so it was regarding the Moshe of our generation, which is my father-in-law, the Rebbe, the leader of the generation. That his work of arousing and revealing the faith of every Jew, that they should reveal their essence, it was in a way that afterwards they should serve God with their own kochos. In other words, which is exactly what the Rebbe is doing. He's not just exciting you, he's exciting you to the point that it makes you want to do stuff on your own. This is, so to speak, like the difference in, at least in principle and theory, between the era of the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid and all the students of the Maggid, which we sort of like call Polisher Chassidus, versus Chabad Chassidus. This is like more like an entire class topic to jump into, but in a minute to finish it off, there's an idea, also even in Chassidus, that there's what we call general Chassidus and Pratisdik Chassidus. It's just basically pre-Chabad and post-Chabad. And in the pre-Chabad Chassidus, which we consider them the forefathers Chassidus, we're not knocking it, but it was a lead-in. It was exactly the same two things before the Purim story, in the beginning of the Purim story, and after the Purim story. It's like the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid versus the Alter Rebbe and afterwards, because the job of the Chassidic Rebbes in the beginning was that they will do the work for you. Tzaddik be'emunasa yichya. There's a notion that it says a tzaddik lives by his faith. And they translated, said, tzaddik b'munasa yechaya. A tzaddik will enliven you with his faith. That because the tzaddik is like mamash so high, if you come anywhere near him, he's just going to pull you up. He's going to do it for you. So all you got to do is like bind yourself to the tzaddik and you'll be okay. That was the philosophy. Once the Alter Rebbe came in, he called it Chabad for a very important reason. Chabad is when you get out of the chaya and yechida. When you go back into your own mind and heart. And his point was, the Rebbe's job is not to enliven you and do it for you. It's to enliven you so you do it yourself. So you bring it into your own mind. And that's why the Alter Rebbe gave us such a thing called Chabad Hasidus, which is such a departure from the Hasidus that came before, because it's something you can sit and study yourself and figure out like a Gemara. If you read the writings of Hasidus before Chabad, they're very short, pithy, powerful statements which inspire and excite you. But you can't sit there. It's not delivered in such a way that you can sit there for like 60 hours like you would over like a Tosafos and the Rif and the Ran and trying to figure out, turn to page 60, turn to page 21, we got to figure this out. What does it say in the other book? Because it wasn't given over in such a way that you could do it yourself. So the Rebbeim, and he's saying my father-in-law, but the Rebbe is doing it to us right now, they inspired us in such a way where they empowered us to go ahead and inspire ourselves. To leave the hard work for us, yes, but to give us all the tools we need in order to do that hard work. And Pashid inspires to such a way that we continue to do the work on our own. To the point that we become a ner tamid, a continuous flame, where there is not shaykh any change, even from the standpoint of your revealed powers. And al yedei zeh zochim b'karuv mamash, through this we will soon be meritorious to the geula misis v'ashlema. Sha'az yegilu elokus gam etzad hamata, where godliness will be seen not only, so to speak, in the higher worlds, but also down below, as we've been describing. And there will be, at that point, the actual bringing of the olive oil and the lighting of the menorah. Like, in other words, we'll fulfill this verse in literal action. We're going to bring Moshe Rabbeinu the oil in order to light the actual menorah, gam begashmias, in the third Beis Hamikdash, begeula misva shlema al yedei Mashiach tzidkenu, immediately now. L'chaim, l'chaim. V'ata Tetzave. There it is, boys.
You just revolutionized our lives in 34 minutes.
Okay.